I work the ticket booth at Sydney's Central Station. An American tourist approached my window holding an empty Starbucks cup. "Excuse me, where do I throw this away?" I pointed to the bin 2 meters from my window. He looked at it, then back at me. "Is that a recycling bin or garbage?" I told him it was general waste. He squinted at the label. "But it says rubbish. That's recycling, right?" I explained that rubbish means garbage in Australia. He looked genuinely concerned. "So where's your actual garbage then?" I pointed again. "That bin. Rubbish is garbage." He stood there processing this for a solid 10 seconds, then walked away still holding his cup. I watched him ask 2 more people the same question before finally using the bin. Last month, an American woman demanded a metro pass for Melbourne. I explained we don't have metros, we have trams. She insisted I was wrong. I saw them. They're underground trains. That's a metro. I told her those were regular trains that go underground in the city loop. She pulled out her phone to Google it. After reading for 30 seconds, she looked up triumphantly. "See? It says Melbourne Metro. You do have metros." I explained that's just the network name. The actual vehicles are trains and trams. She asked to speak to my supervisor. My supervisor told her the same thing. She bought a Mikey card while muttering about false advertising. Now, let me tell you about the time an American tried to tip our bus driver. A middle-aged American man boarded my Brisbane bus holding a $50 note. He asked how much the fare was. I told him it's cashless. He needed a Go card. He looked at the 50 in his hand, then at me. "What do you mean cashless?" "I have cash right here." I explained the system doesn't accept physical money anymore. He started getting frustrated. "That's ridiculous. Cash is legal tender. You have to accept it." I pointed to the sign explaining the Go card system. He read it quickly and waved it off. "This can't be right. What if someone doesn't have a card?" I told him they'd need to buy one at a station or newsagent. He demanded to know where the nearest one was. I told him there was a newsagent 3 blocks back. He stared at me like I'd personally wronged him. "So I have to get off this bus, walk 3 blocks, buy a card, walk back here, and hope another bus comes?" I nodded. He asked if I could just make an exception this one time. I explained the machine physically cannot accept cash, there's nowhere to put it. He held the $50 note up to my face. "So this is worthless to you?" I told him it was very much not worthless, just not usable on this particular bus. He got off, muttering that Australia was heading toward communism. Through my mirror, I watched him try to flag down a taxi with the same $50 note held high like a surrender flag. 2 weeks later in Perth, an American woman tapped her credit card on the train station reader. It beeped and flashed red. She tapped again. Red again. She tried a 3rd time, then looked at me. "Your machine's broken." I asked if she'd registered the card for travel. She looked confused. "Register? I just need to tap it." I explained that international cards need to be registered online first, or she needs a Smart Rider card. She pulled out her phone and showed me her banking app. "Look, it works everywhere else. The problem is your machine." I walked her through the registration process on her phone. She got annoyed at having to enter her card details again. When I finished helping her, she said, "This is such a complicated system. In America, you just tap and go." I pointed out that she just needed to register once and then could tap and go forever. She walked away saying she'd just Uber everywhere instead. The next day, I saw her at the same station, tapping the same card, getting the same red light. When I approached to help, she waved me off. I figured it out. She hadn't. She'd been jumping the barrier all week. Security caught her 3 days later. She claimed she didn't know it was illegal since the machine didn't work anyway. In Adelaide, an American man insisted on buying a single-trip paper ticket. I told him we don't sell those anymore, everyone uses Metro cards. He leaned on my counter. Listen, I'm only here for 2 days. I don't want a whole card. I explained the card itself costs $5 and can be topped up with any amount. He pushed back. But then I'll have money left on it when I leave. That's a scam. I told him he could get a refund at any station. He didn't believe me. Sure, if I want to waste an hour of my vacation standing in another line. I explained it takes 5 minutes, not an hour. He refused to buy the card and asked about other options. I told him there weren't any. He asked if taxis took cash. I said yes, but they'd cost 20 times more than a train. He pulled out his phone and called an Uber. While waiting, he complained loudly to another tourist about how backward our public transport was because we banned paper tickets. The other tourist, who was German, politely informed him that most of Europe went cashless years ago. The American replied, "Yeah, but Europe is socialist." Working Sydney ferries, I watched an American family board the Manly ferry with luggage. The father asked me how long until we reached Melbourne. I blinked. Melbourne? He showed me his phone with a map. Yeah, we're going to Melbourne next. The hotel said to take the ferry. I explained that Melbourne is a different city about 900 kilometers away. His face went blank. What do you mean different city? The guidebook said it was nearby. I asked to see his guidebook. It was from 2003 and had a small map showing Sydney and Melbourne on the same page. He'd assumed same page meant same metropolitan area. His wife pulled up Google Maps and zoomed out. They both went silent as they realized the scale. The father looked at me desperately. So this ferry doesn't go to Melbourne? I confirmed it went to Manly, a suburb 40 minutes away. He asked if any ferries went to Melbourne. I told him no, he'd need a plane or a very long drive. He turned to his wife. Why didn't you check this? She shot back. You're the one who said it was close. They argued for 3 minutes while blocking the boarding line. Eventually, they got off and rebooked their entire day. I heard the father say, I thought Australia was small. Last winter in Hobart, an American couple asked me which tram goes to Mona. I told them Hobart doesn't have trams. The woman looked skeptical. Really? Every city has trams. I explained that only Melbourne has an extensive tram network in Australia. She pulled up a photo on her phone. Then what's this? It was a picture of a Melbourne tram. I told her that was Melbourne, not Hobart. She zoomed in on the photo's metadata. But I took this yesterday. I looked closer. The location tag said Melbourne. She insisted we were in Melbourne right now. Her husband checked his phone and went pale. Honey, we're in Tasmania. She grabbed his phone. What? No. We flew to Melbourne yesterday. I gently explained that Hobart is the capital of Tasmania, an island state. They'd somehow flown to the wrong city entirely. The husband pulled out their itinerary. Every booking said Melbourne. They just assumed Hobart was a Melbourne neighborhood. The wife started panicking about their dinner reservations. The husband asked if there was a bridge to Melbourne. I told him no, it's across water and requires a flight or overnight ferry. They spent 20 minutes on the phone with their travel agent, who apparently also hadn't noticed the mistake. When they finished, the husband asked me, "Is there anything to do in Tasmania?" I listed about 15 world-class attractions. He nodded slowly. Okay, but is there a zoo? I told him yes. He seemed relieved. Good. At least there's something. In Canberra, an American tourist asked me for directions to the Sydney Opera House. I told him we're in Canberra, not Sydney. He checked his GPS, but it says I'm in Australia. I explained that Australia is an entire country and we're in the capital city, which is Canberra. He looked genuinely shocked. The capital isn't Sydney? I confirmed it wasn't. He thought for a moment. Is it Melbourne then? I said no, it's Canberra, where we're standing right now. He couldn't accept this. That doesn't make sense. Why would the capital be some random city? I explained that Canberra was specifically built to be the capital as a compromise between Sydney and Melbourne. He pulled out his phone and Googled it. After reading for a minute, he looked up at me suspiciously. This says Canberra was purpose-built in 1913. That's recent. What was the capital before that? I told him there wasn't one. Australia became a federation in 1901 and chose Canberra's location shortly after. He shook his head. Every country has an old capital. Where was yours? I repeated that Canberra was always the plan. He walked away muttering about revisionist history. My favorite story happened last summer on the Gold Coast tram. An American man in his 60s sat down next to me and immediately started complaining. These seats are too hard. American buses have cushioned seats. I didn't respond. He continued anyway. And there's no air conditioning. How do you people survive? I pointed to the vents blowing cold air directly at us. He waved dismissively. That's barely anything. In Texas, our buses are like refrigerators. The tram stopped at Southport. He stood up and asked me which direction was north. I pointed. He nodded and walked confidently south. I watched him go, then noticed he'd left his phone on the seat. I grabbed it and ran after him. Sir, your phone. He turned around, patted his pockets, and looked relieved. He took the phone and said, "Thanks, mate." Then he kept walking south. I called out, "You're going the wrong way. North is behind you." He stopped, turned around, and looked at me suspiciously. "How do you know where I'm going?" I told him he'd literally just asked me which way was north. He thought about this. Right. But I changed my mind. I'm going south now. I asked if he knew what was south. He said confidently, the beach. I informed him the beach was east, and south would take him to the highway. He pulled out a paper map, studied it upside down for 10 seconds, then folded it back up. The map's wrong. I can see the water from here. He was looking at a canal. I pointed to the actual ocean, which was perpendicular to where he was staring. He squinted at it. That's not the ocean. It's too small. I explained it was definitely the ocean and the canal was definitely not. He stood there for a long moment, map in hand, phone in the other, looking between the canal and the actual beach. Finally, he said, "Australian maps are confusing," and walked toward the highway anyway. Working Australian public transport taught me something valuable. Confidence and accuracy are completely unrelated. The most lost people are always the most certain they're right. And somehow, the rubbish bins cause more confusion than anything else. Next time, I'll tell you about Americans trying to understand Australian coffee culture. Trust me, if they can't handle a Mikey card, they're definitely not ready for a flat white.